Blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but in my family, it was measured in carat size and status. My own mother skipped my wedding to attend my sister's engagement party. She thought I was marrying a nobody. She had absolutely no idea who my husband really was. If you looked up golden child in the dictionary, you would find a perfectly airbrushed, professionally lit photograph of my older sister, Brittany. Growing up in our suburban household in Ohio, there was a clear hierarchy, and it was entirely dictated by my mother, Margaret Higgins. My mother was a woman who lived for appearances. She thrived on neighborhood gossip, country club politics, and the perceived envy of other women. Brittany was her masterpiece, a former pageant queen, a varsity cheerleader, and a girl who knew exactly how to play the game to get whatever she wanted. I, on the other hand, was the afterthought. I was the quiet, introverted art kid who preferred charcoal smudges on my jeans over designer labels. When I moved to Chicago to become a graphic designer, my mother treated it like a mild embarrassment she had to explain away to her friends at her weekly bridge games. The divide between Brittany and me only widened when it came to our romantic lives. Brittany was dating Harrison Montgomery, a flashy, aggressively confident junior partner at a corporate law firm. Harrison drove a leased Porsche, wore Gucci loafers with no socks, and never missed an opportunity to talk about his investment portfolio. My mother absolutely worshipped him. She treated him like royalty, constantly bragging about his pedigree and his high society connections in Connecticut. Then, there was my William. I met William in the most ordinary way possible. He accidentally spilled a hot Americano on my sketchbook at a local coffee shop. He was mortified, immediately offering to buy me a new book and a fresh coffee. He wore a faded gray t-shirt, well-worn Levi's, and heavy work boots. He was ruggedly handsome, but completely unassuming. When I asked what he did for a living, he rubbed the back of his neck and said, "I work in logistics and property management for my family's business." I assumed he was a warehouse manager or a site foreman. I didn't care. William was the kindest, most grounded, and most genuinely brilliant man I had ever met. He listened to me when I talked. He remembered the smallest details about my life, and he made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We fell in love hard and fast. After 2 years of dating, William proposed. It wasn't a grand, public spectacle. It was just the two of us in our small apartment, surrounded by lit candles and a home-cooked meal. He presented me with a beautiful, understated vintage gold ring with a modest sapphire. It was perfect. It was us. I called my mother the next morning, practically buzzing with excitement. "Mom, William proposed. We're getting married." I squealed into the phone. There was a noticeable pause on the other end of the line. "Oh," Margaret said, her voice entirely devoid of warmth. "Well, congratulations, Chloe. I suppose it's about time. Does he have a 401k yet? Or is he still hauling boxes for that property company?" The excitement drained out of me instantly. "He manages logistics, Mom, and we're very happy." "Right, well, as long as you're realistic about your budget, don't expect me to foot the bill for a lavish affair." "Your father's alimony only goes so far," she snapped, referring to my dad, Thomas, who had smartly divorced her a decade prior. I swallowed the lump in my throat and told her we were planning a beautiful, intimate ceremony at the Chicago Botanical Garden for October 12th of the following year. She told me to send her a save the date and quickly rushed off the phone because Brittany was coming over. 3 weeks later, Brittany got engaged. If my engagement was a quiet whisper, Brittany's was a stadium rock concert. Harrison proposed on a private yacht on Lake Michigan, complete with a hired string quartet, a professional photography team, and a blinding 4-carat diamond ring that looked heavy enough to cause nerve damage. My mother lost her absolute mind. Within an hour, she had posted 40 different photos on Facebook, practically writing an essay about her perfect daughter and her brilliant future son-in-law. She immediately threw a lavish, catered dinner at her house, just to celebrate the announcement of the engagement. I swallowed my pride, put on a smile, and attended the dinner with William. Throughout the evening, my mother made several passive-aggressive comments, loudly comparing the stunning clarity of Brittany's diamond to my cute little colored stone. William just held my hand under the table, his thumb rubbing soothing circles into my skin. He never took the bait. He just smiled politely, a strange, calm amusement dancing in his eyes. Over the next few months, William and I paid for our wedding entirely out of our own pockets. We booked the botanical garden, hired a wonderful local photographer, and kept our guest list to an intimate 50 people. I sent out the formal invitations in early June. 2 weeks later, the bomb dropped. I was sitting in my living room when my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was a digital invitation from my mother. You are cordially invited to the engagement gala of Brittany Higgins and Harrison Montgomery. Date, October 12th. Time, 4 p.m. My stomach plummeted. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. October 12th, my wedding day. The ceremony was literally scheduled for 4:30 p.m. I immediately called my mother. Mom, what is this? October 12th is my wedding day. You've known this for 8 months. You have the invitation on your fridge. Oh, Chloe, don't be so dramatic, Margaret sighed, sounding profoundly inconvenienced by my distress. It's the only weekend the Oak Brook Country Club had available for their grand ballroom. Harrison's family is flying in from Connecticut, and we simply could not accommodate another date. It's my wedding day, I repeated, my voice cracking. You booked an engagement party on my wedding day. Well, you'll just have to move it, she stated, as casually as if she were telling me to reschedule a dentist appointment. It's just a little garden gathering, Chloe. You can push it to November. It's not like you're booking the plaza. I refused. I told my mother, in no uncertain terms, that I was not moving my wedding. I had signed contracts, I had non-refundable deposits, and more importantly, it was the principle of the matter. I am getting married on October 12th, Mom, I said, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone. If you choose to be at an engagement party instead of your own daughter's wedding, then that is on you. Are you giving me an ultimatum? She hissed, her tone turning venomous. Because you will lose, Chloe. You are being completely unreasonable and selfish. Brittany has been dreaming of this country club party for months. She's been engaged for 3 months. I've had this date set for almost a year. We are going to Brittany's party, Margaret finalized coldly. And I will be letting the rest of the family know exactly why you won't be attending. She hung up, and she went scorched earth. Over the next week, the RSVP bloodbath began. My mother called Aunt Susan, Uncle Robert, Cousin Melissa, and everyone else on the maternal side of the family. She spun a masterclass narrative of victimhood, claiming that I was throwing a petulant, jealous tantrum and refusing to share the joy of the season with my sister. She told them I was demanding the family choose between us, and she heavily implied that Harrison's family would be very offended if the Higgins side didn't show up in full force. One by one, the rejection cards came in the mail. Aunt Susan called me and sounded painfully uncomfortable. Chloe, sweetie, you know we love you, but your mother is making things impossible. It's just easier to go to the party. We'll send you a lovely gift, okay? Uncle Robert didn't even bother calling. He just checked will not attend and added a sticky note that said, sorry, back problems. 2 months later, he would be tagged in photos doing the limbo at Brittany's open bar gala. I broke down. I sat on the hardwood floor of my apartment, surrounded by the beautiful, handcrafted centerpieces I had spent weeks making, and I sobbed until I couldn't breathe. My entire family, save for my dad, who was furious on my behalf but powerless to change Margaret's mind, was abandoning me for an engagement party. William came home from work to find me in pieces. He dropped his keys, rushed over, and pulled me into his chest. I poured out the whole pathetic story, crying onto his cheap gray t-shirt. He didn't get angry in a loud, explosive way. Instead, William got incredibly quiet. His jaw tightened, and his eyes grew dark and hard in a way I had never seen before. He held me tightly, kissing the top of my head. They don't know, he murmured, almost to himself. They have absolutely no idea. No idea about what? I sniffled. William pulled back, looking me dead in the eyes. Chloe, I promise you they are going to regret this. Not just because they're missing out on seeing the most beautiful bride in the world, but because they made their choice based on a game they don't even know how to play. Just trust me. Let them have their country club. We are going to have the best day of our lives. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but his calm certainty gave me the strength to push forward. The morning of October 12th arrived. The weather was unusually perfect for Chicago in autumn, crisp, cool, with a brilliant blue sky and trees exploding in vibrant golds and reds. I put on my wedding dress with the help of my best friend and maid of honor, Valerie. It was a simple, elegant A-line gown that I had bought off the rack, but I felt like magic in it. When we arrived at the botanical garden, reality hit me like a physical blow. The ceremony space was stunning, adorned with trailing ivy and white roses, but as I peeked through the staging area, I saw the seating. The groom's side was entirely full. William had about 30 guests, mostly friends, a few older couples he introduced as mentors, and some distant cousins. The bride's side had exactly 3 people sitting in it: Valerie's boyfriend, a co-worker from my design firm, and my dad, Thomas. A fresh wave of grief washed over me. The empty white folding chairs felt like a massive, glaring neon sign, broadcasting my mother's rejection. She had actually done it. She had skipped my wedding. Right at this moment, she was probably across town, sipping expensive champagne and adjusting Brittany's tiara. My dad stepped into the staging area, looking handsome in his charcoal suit. He saw my face, saw the tears threatening to spill, and immediately pulled me into a fierce hug. "Don't you dare cry over her, Chloe," my dad whispered fiercely. "She is a foolish, shallow woman, and she is missing out on the best thing she ever put into this world. You look breathtaking. Now, let's go marry that young man of yours." The music swelled. A string quartet which I hadn't booked, but Valerie quietly mentioned William had surprised me with, began to play perfectly. My dad walked me down the aisle. I forced myself to keep my eyes off the empty chairs on the left and focused entirely on the end of the aisle. William was standing there, and the breath caught in my throat. I was so used to seeing him in jeans and work boots that I was entirely unprepared for this. He was wearing a bespoke, midnight blue tuxedo that fit him with razor-sharp precision. He looked incredibly wealthy, powerful, and utterly devoted. The way he looked at me wiped every ounce of sadness from my mind. The ceremony was beautiful, intimate, and deeply emotional. When we exchanged our vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, at least, not on William's side of the aisle. We kissed. The small crowd cheered, and we were finally pronounced husband and wife. As we walked back up the aisle together, hand in hand, William leaned down to my ear. "Ready for the reception, Mrs. Kensington?" he asked, a sharp, knowing smile on his face. "I can't wait for the tacos," I laughed, referring to the gourmet taco truck we had hired for our small backyard reception at my dad's house. William chuckled, a deep, resonant sound. "There's been a slight change of plans. The taco truck is heading somewhere else. I hope you don't mind." Before I could ask what he meant, we walked out of the garden gates. Waiting for us at the curb wasn't my dad's trusty Subaru. It was a flawless, vintage black Rolls-Royce Phantom, complete with a uniformed driver who immediately opened the door for us, bowing his head slightly as William guided me inside. The plush leather seats of the Rolls-Royce enveloped me, and I stared at William, my jaw practically resting on my collarbone. "William, what is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Where did this car come from? Where are we going?" He reached across the console, taking my hand in his. The calluses on his fingers, the ones I always assumed came from manual labor, were still there, but the man wearing the custom tuxedo looked like a different person entirely. "I have a confession to make, Chloe," he said, his voice gentle but laced with a nervous tension I had never heard before. "I didn't exactly lie to you about what I do, but I heavily omitted the scale. When I said I work in logistics and property management for my family's business, I meant Kensington Global Logistics." I blinked, the name echoing in my mind. Kensington. It sounded familiar. I lived in Chicago. You couldn't drive down the Magnificent Mile or read the financial section of the Chicago Tribune without seeing that name. They were a massive international shipping and commercial real estate conglomerate, competing on a global scale with titans like Maersk and FedEx. "Wait," I breathed, my eyes widening. "Kensington, as in the family that owns half the commercial real estate in the Loop?" William nodded slowly. "My grandfather founded the company. My father is the CEO, and I manage the North American operations. The warehouse I go to every day is our corporate headquarters. The heavy lifting is negotiating international trade contracts." My mind spun. "But, your apartment? Your gray t-shirts? The boots?" "The boots are comfortable," he smiled, a bit sheepishly. "And the apartment? Chloe, before I met you, my life was a relentless parade of people who only saw my last name. Women who wanted the black card, friends who wanted investors, people who only cared about what I could buy them. I was exhausted. I took a step back, rented a modest place under a corporate LLC, and tried to just exist as a normal guy for a while. He squeezed my hand, his eyes locking onto mine with an intense, burning sincerity. Then I spilled coffee on the most beautiful, brilliant girl I'd ever seen. And you didn't look at my watch. You didn't care about my car. You just cared about me. You loved me when you thought I was a warehouse manager making 60 grand a year. You stood by me when your mother belittled me. You proved to me every single day that your heart is pure gold. Tears pricked my eyes again, but this time they weren't from grief. So, he continued, his smile turning wicked, I figured since your mother decided to throw a country club party to show off her future son-in-law's leased lifestyle, it was time I finally introduced my wife to my world. Welcome to your real reception, Mrs. Kensington. The car pulled up to the iconic entrance of the Drake Hotel in the Gold Coast neighborhood. The doors were opened by waiting staff, and as we stepped out, a flurry of camera flashes went off from a small, coordinated group of society photographers. William led me inside, straight past the opulent lobby, and into the legendary grand ballroom. When the double doors opened, I literally gasped. The room had been transformed into an absolute wonderland. Thousands of white orchids cascaded from the ceiling. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, romantic glow over 30 tables draped in silk. A 12-piece orchestra was playing softly in the corner, and the guests there were easily 200 people there. I recognized William's parents instantly from the few times we had video chatted, though they were now dressed in stunning evening wear rather than the casual weekend clothes I was used to. His mother rushed forward, pulling me into a warm, genuine embrace. Chloe, darling, you look absolutely breathtaking, she beamed. We are so incredibly thrilled to finally welcome you to the family properly. You all knew? I stammered. Of course we did, his father boomed with a hearty laugh. William told us he'd found the one, but he made us swear on our lives to keep the secret until the wedding day. We've been dying to spoil you. The night was a whirlwind of absolute perfection. I danced, I drank vintage champagne, and I was embraced by a family that welcomed me with open arms and zero pretension, despite their staggering wealth. I didn't think about my mother or Brittany once. The next morning, reality caught up with the Higgins family with the subtlety of a freight train. William and I were enjoying a quiet, lazy breakfast in bed in the penthouse suite of the Drake. The smell of freshly brewed espresso and warm pastries filled the room, a stark contrast to the absolute chaos that was about to erupt on my phone. My device began to vibrate violently on the mahogany nightstand. It buzzed, stopped for a fraction of a second, and immediately started buzzing again. I leaned over and glanced at the glowing screen. Mom, 14, missed calls. I looked over at William, who was casually leaning against the plush headboard, reading the Sunday edition of the Chicago Tribune. He smirked, his eyes crinkling at the corners, before he deliberately folded the paper in half and handed it to me without a word. There, taking up the entire top half of the Sunday Society and Business section, was a massive, full-color photograph of William and me. It captured the exact moment we were stepping out of the vintage Rolls-Royce in front of the Drake, completely surrounded by a flurry of society photographers. The headline was printed in bold, unmissable ink. Billionaire Hair William Kensington weds local designer in stunning surprise ceremony. The article was incredibly detailed. It outlined the ultra-exclusive nature of the reception, listed the high-profile politicians and business magnates in attendance, and specifically noted that the Kensington family had kept the relationship tightly under wraps for 2 years, to protect the bride's privacy from society opportunists. I imagine her country club brunch just got a little less appetizing, William noted dryly, taking a slow sip of his espresso. I picked up the phone just as it started ringing for the 15th time. I hit answer and placed it on the mattress between us on speakerphone. Chloe? My mother's voice was shrill, frantic, and entirely breathless. It sounded as though she had literally sprinted miles to a landline. Chloe, are you there? Please tell me you are there. I'm here, Mom, I said, my voice eerily calm compared to her hysteria. Chloe? What is this? The newspaper. It was delivered to the country club this morning. It says, William. Kensington? The Kensingtons? The international shipping and real estate Kensingtons? She sounded like she was hyperventilating, her breaths coming in sharp, panicky gasps. Yes, Mom, that Kensington. Why didn't you tell me? she shrieked, her sheer panic suddenly giving way to an indignant, self-righteous rage. Do you have any idea how I look right now? I told all my friends he was a warehouse worker. I skipped the wedding of a Kensington heir for. She couldn't even bring herself to finish the sentence. The devastating, heavy irony had fully settled into her bones, crushing her completely. You skipped my wedding for a country club engagement party, I corrected her, keeping my tone gentle, but possessing a spine of absolute steel. Because Harrison drove a leased Porsche and bought a table at a golf course. Because you cared far more about flashing a false, shallow image of wealth to your bridge club than you did about standing by your own daughter. Chloe, honey, sweetie, let's not dwell on the past, Margaret stammered, completely changing her tune. The desperation in her voice was so thick it was almost suffocating. We are family. Blood is blood. This is incredible news, darling. Brittany and Harrison are just absolutely thrilled for you. In fact, Brittany is right here. I could hear frantic whispering in the background, followed by Brittany's voice, sounding entirely strained. Hey, sis, so crazy about William. We definitely need to get the boys together for golf at the club. We were just saying we should host a massive joint celebration dinner, my mother interrupted, taking the phone back. We can book the private dining room at Morton's Steakhouse. Invite the whole family. My treat, well, maybe William's treat, since we're celebrating your grand debut into society. I actually laughed out loud. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was a cold, hollow sound that echoed in the quiet luxury of the penthouse. There will be no joint dinner, Mom. There will be no golf. You made your choice yesterday. I can explain the scheduling conflict, she pleaded. No, I cut her off instantly. I am drawing a boundary right here, right now. You are not going to ride William's coattails to impress the women at your country club. You are not going to use my marriage as gossip currency. You wanted your golden child, and you wanted her perfect, wealthy fiancé. You have them. Enjoy your prize. I didn't wait for her to formulate another excuse. I hung up the phone, went into my settings, and permanently blocked her number. I did the same for Brittany a moment later. The drama in my family, however, was only just beginning. Over the next month, the ripple effect of the newspaper article caused absolute chaos. Aunt Susan, Uncle Robert, and Cousin Melissa blew up my voicemail, offering pathetic, groveling apologies and sending extravagant floral arrangements that I immediately donated to local hospitals. They realized they had completely sold me out, only to find out they had missed the social event of the decade. But the most spectacular collapse belonged to Harrison Montgomery. The truth about Brittany's perfect fiancé began to leak out rapidly. His grand, untouchable facade was nothing more than a house of cards built on terrifying amounts of debt. His law firm wasn't a powerhouse. He was a junior associate barely clinging to his job, drowning in 6 figures of student loans. The Porsche he flaunted was leased, and the lease was 2 months past due. That blinding 4-carat engagement ring, financed on 3 different credit cards with exorbitant interest rates. The extravagant engagement party at the Oak Brook Country Club had quite literally maxed out the last of his available credit. The final, brutal twist of the knife happened just 3 weeks after my wedding. Harrison's struggling boutique law firm was quietly acquired by a massive corporate entity to handle their mind-numbing overflow compliance paperwork. That corporate entity was a direct subsidiary of Kensington Global Logistics. I will never forget the day William came home, loosening his silk tie with a wicked smirk on his face. He told me about a virtual, company-wide integration meeting he had led that morning. When William's face appeared on the main screen as the executive director of North American operations, Harrison Montgomery, sitting in a drab cubicle on the other end of the call, physically turned pale and logged off the meeting. Harrison went from bragging about his high society connections to quietly shuffling compliance documents, absolutely terrified that William would recognize his name on a payroll sheet and terminate him. William, of course, didn't care enough to fire him. He preferred the poetic justice of letting Harrison sweat it out in the bowels of the corporate hierarchy, fully aware that the warehouse worker he had sneered at now controlled his health insurance. Without the endless stream of credit, Brittany's wedding plans disintegrated. Her massive, 300-person country club gala was forcefully downsized to a modest, incredibly tense afternoon luncheon at a local public park pavilion. My mother, completely humiliated and entirely out of funds, had to swallow her immense pride and beg my father, Thomas, for a loan just to help cover the basic buffet catering. My dad politely and very firmly declined. I didn't attend Brittany's budget wedding. I was entirely too busy spending 3 weeks honeymooning in a private villa on the Amalfi Coast, drinking wine with a man who loved me enough to hide the entire world from me until he knew for absolute certain that I only wanted him. They played a vicious, shallow game of status, appearances, and wealth. And in the end, they lost absolutely everything. I played no games at all, and I won the only thing in this world that actually mattered: a real, enduring, and fiercely loyal love. The global empire that came with it? That was just the icing on the wedding cake. If you loved this story of brutal karma, toxic family dynamics, and a billionaire romance twist, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It helps the channel out so much. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more crazy, real-life drama stories just like this one. Share this video with a friend who loves a good revenge plot, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below.